I wasn't even planning to hit record today. This was supposed to be one of those slower mornings, catching up on what's been said around the league, nothing urgent. Then something crossed my screen that didn't feel normal. It didn't feel like noise. It didn't feel like the usual debate segment trying to fill time. It felt different the second I saw it, and within seconds, you could tell this wasn't just another Lakers discussion. At first, it looked like exaggeration, the kind of headline that gets people to click and move on. But the moment the clip actually played out, everything changed. The tone, the posture, the way it was delivered. This wasn't entertainment. This was someone stepping into territory you almost never see on national television, especially when the subject involves a franchise like this one. And when the words finally landed, it didn't feel like a take. It felt like a line being drawn. A statement was made, clear and direct, with no room for interpretation. Not just confidence, not just belief, something much stronger than that. The kind of conviction that makes the entire room go quiet, because everyone instantly understands the weight of what was just said. The idea wasn't just bold, it carried consequences tied to it. And that's when you realize this is no longer just a conversation about basketball. The claim? That a deal is already moving behind the scenes, and if everything holds, a young elite big man is expected to be wearing purple and gold before the week is over. Take a second and really process that. Because if you've been watching this team closely over the last few years, you already know exactly where the cracks have been. It's not effort, it's not history, it's not expectations, it's structure. It's been about finding that one piece in the front court that changes how everything functions on both ends of the floor without disrupting what already exists. And that's where this starts to make sense. The Lakers haven't just been looking for size. They've been looking for the right kind of size. Someone who protects the rim at a high level but doesn't suffocate the offense. Someone who understands spacing, who can stretch the floor, who doesn't force the game into tight spaces when it matters most. That balance has been missing for a while, and every attempt to fix it has felt incomplete. Now imagine adding a player who naturally solves that equation. Defensively, it immediately shifts the entire responsibility that's been sitting on Anthony Davis for years. Instead of carrying the full burden as the last line of defense, there's support. Real support. That changes how aggressive the defense can be, how much ground can be covered, how much pressure can be applied without fear of collapse behind it. Offensively, it opens something this team hasn't consistently had. Space that actually forces defenses to make uncomfortable choices. Stay inside, you give up clean perimeter looks, step out, and now the paint belongs to players who know exactly how to exploit it. That's the kind of pressure that doesn't show up in basic stats, but you feel it every possession. Right Lake Show forever, if you believe the Lakers can still make another serious run. But what really stands out here isn't just the fit for right now. It's what this could mean beyond the present moment. Because as much as this franchise is always tied to competing immediately, there's an undeniable reality sitting in the background. Time doesn't slow down, even for legends. At some point, the conversation shifts from how far can this group go to what comes next. And that's where this kind of move carries a different kind of weight. You're not just adding talent, you're potentially securing direction, a foundation that extends beyond the current era, without sacrificing what's still possible today. And here's where things start to feel even more real. The information behind all of this didn't come off like speculation. It didn't feel like guessing. It was framed with a level of certainty that you almost never hear unless something is already in motion. Conversations happening internally, groundwork already laid, details being aligned. Not a possibility, something much closer than that. And when you connect that with everything this organization has been searching for, it stops sounding unrealistic. It starts sounding inevitable. Comment, purple and gold never fades. If you know this franchise always comes back into the fight. Because if this actually crosses the line from discussion to reality, everything shifts. Not just the lineup, not just the rotation, the entire identity of the team, the way they defend, the way they space the floor, the way they manage minutes, the way they handle pressure situations deep into a series, and more importantly, the way the rest of the league looks at them. This isn't just about adding a player. This is about resetting expectations overnight. And the feeling right now? It's that something is building behind closed doors, something that hasn't fully surfaced yet. But when it does, it's going to hit fast. So stay locked in, because what's coming next in this story might be the part that changes how all of this is being viewed internally. And once that piece comes out, a lot more starts to make sense. Because there's one layer of this that still hasn't been fully unpacked, and it's the part people inside the league pay attention to more than anything else: timing. Moves like this don't just appear out of nowhere. When something reaches this level of confidence, it usually means the groundwork has been in place for a while. Conversations don't start this week, they reach a breaking point this week. And that tells you the front office hasn't been sitting still. It tells you they've been evaluating, negotiating, and waiting for the exact window where everything lines up. And when that window opens, the Lakers historically don't hesitate. That's what separates this franchise from most. There's an understanding that opportunities like this don't come around often, especially when they check both boxes at the same time, helping you now while shaping what comes next. That dual impact is rare, and when it shows up, hesitation usually means missing it. Now think about the internal pressure tied to that. This isn't a team that can afford to drift, not with the banners hanging in that building, not with the expectations tied to every season. Every decision carries weight, and when something like this is on the table, it's not just a roster move. It's a statement about where this organization believes it's headed. And there's another angle here that hasn't been talked about enough: the locker room dynamic. You bring in a player with that kind of profile, that kind of upside, and it changes the energy inside the team. It raises the internal standard without anyone having to say it out loud. Veterans feel it. The coaching staff adjusts around it. Rotations tighten, accountability increases, and suddenly the margin for error gets smaller in a good way. That's how serious teams evolve mid-cycle. Right, Lakers pride if you have supported this team through every era. And then there's the part that fans don't always see immediately, but it matters just as much as anything happening on the court. The message this sends across the league. When a move like this is even close to happening, agents notice. Players notice. The perception shifts. Los Angeles stops being a question mark and starts looking like a destination again. That ripple effect is real. Now here's where things get even more interesting. There are still pieces of this situation that haven't been made public yet. Details that would explain not just how this works, but why it's happening right now instead of later. And from what's being hinted behind the scenes, those details could change how people evaluate this entire move. So if you're following this closely, this is the moment to stay locked in. Because once those final elements surface, the picture becomes a lot clearer. And when that happens, the reaction around the league is going to come fast. Faster than most people are expecting. And if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed yet, this is exactly the kind of moment where being late means missing the full story as it unfolds. When this breaks, it's not going to trickle out slowly. It's going to hit all at once. And the difference between hearing it first or catching up later comes down to whether you're already here when it drops. Comment: the banners tell the story. If you believe the history of this franchise still matters today. Because what's about to come out next isn't just an update. It's the piece that could confirm everything, or take this in a direction nobody outside that building is fully prepared for yet. If you love following the Lakers and everything around this team, subscribe now because we cover every story that matters. What's quietly circulating now adds another layer that hasn't been addressed publicly, and it has less to do with talent and more to do with cost. Because if something this significant is close, it means decisions were made about what this team is willing to give up to get it done. And that's where things get serious. You don't land a piece like this without moving assets that matter. Rotation players, future flexibility, possibly even names that fans have grown attached to over the last few seasons. That's the part that tests how committed an organization really is to chasing the top again. It forces a choice between comfort and ambition. And historically, when this franchise faces that decision, it leans one way: toward banners. There's also a competitive urgency behind all of this that can't be ignored. Internally, there's a recognition that standing still isn't neutral, it's falling behind. The margin in this league is thin, and if you're not actively upgrading, someone else is. That pressure builds quietly, and eventually, it forces action. This feels like one of those moments, because if the framework being discussed actually crosses the finish line, you're looking at a version of this roster that operates with a different level of balance. Less strain on individual performances, more structure across both ends, and a rotation that doesn't collapse the moment something goes wrong. That's how deep runs are built. Right, La still believes if you trust the Lakers can rise when the pressure gets real. And there's something else worth paying attention to: the silence. Not the noise, not the reactions on television, but the lack of pushback from certain circles. Usually, when something like this surfaces and it's off base, you start hearing corrections quickly, subtle denials, leaks that cool things down. That hasn't really happened here, which doesn't confirm anything on its own, but it does keep the door wide open. And in situations like this, when doors stay open longer than expected, it usually means conversations are still active behind them. Now, if this does go through, the adjustment period will be immediate. Expectations won't ease into place. They'll land all at once. Every possession will be analyzed differently. Every rotation decision will carry more weight. That's the reality of putting together a roster that's built to contend, not just compete. And not every team handles that pressure well. But this organization isn't built to avoid pressure. It's built to respond to it. If you've been around long enough, you've seen how quickly things can flip here. One move, one decision, one shift in direction, and suddenly the conversation around the team changes completely. That's what makes moments like this feel different. They don't happen often, but when they do, they tend to matter. If you want to stay ahead of this as it develops, this is the time to lock in with the channel. When the next piece of this story drops, it won't come with a warning, and the breakdown that follows is going to connect details most people won't catch at first glance. Right, never count out the Lake Show if you know this team is always one move away from changing everything. Because what's about to surface next isn't just another update floating around. It's the kind of information that either brings this entire situation into focus or raises even bigger questions about what's really happening behind closed doors. If you're a real Lakers fan and want to stay updated on everything happening with this team, subscribe now because things could get interesting very soon. And here's the part that's about to define everything: confirmation. Not speculation, not discussion, but that final signal that turns all of this into reality. When that hits, the reaction won't be gradual. It'll shift instantly, and the expectations around this team will change overnight. Because if this goes through, it won't just be seen as a move. It'll be seen as intent, clear, aggressive, and aligned with what this franchise has always stood for when the moment demands it. Right? Championship standard. If you believe the Lakers should always be chasing the top, stay connected to the channel now, because when the next update drops, it's going to separate those who heard it first from those trying to catch up after everything is already in motion.